Hey y'all. Well, it's been a week of out with the old, and hopefully we can help usher in the new. And when I'm talking about out with the old and with the new, I'm not talking about this good Robert that I have. If you are watching along on YouTube, you all know my hair might be different next week, but this week we in a cute bob. I am talking about the fact that we have two members of Congress who announced their resignations this week. First, we've got Texas Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez, who resigned amid misconduct allegations, sparking a special election to fill his seat. And more famously and more recently, California gubernatorial candidate Democrat Eric Swalwell announced his resignation and canceled his gubernatorial bid amid multiple accusations of sexual misconduct. Now look, there were plenty of folks online who were doing some seriously wild things this week. Some people were like, but Eric Swalwell is a good Democrat, so can't we just look the other way because there's a whole sexual assaulter in the Oval Office? And I don't understand why y'all think we can't walk and punch rapists at the same time. Like, we're capable of doing a whole lot of things at once. We contain multitudes, you know what I'm saying? Don't actually punch rapists. But, I think that it's about time that we stop acting like holding one person accountable means we can't hold another person accountable. The other thing some of y'all did online, though, was say, we don't believe all women because remember Emmett Till. Y'all, there is no world, no universe, no galaxy in any of our vision or the next in which Eric Swalwell is the same as young, innocent, black child Emmett Till. Y'all need to stop it. Go get some help, at least some therapy, or maybe a history book. But anyway, this story broke in the news, and content creators online helped to keep up the drumbeat. Y'all, what's done in the dark is always gonna come to light. But why are there still powerful figures out here who seem to have, wildly speculated histories of misconduct in this day and age, and nobody's doing anything about it? We have video of other members of Congress who were out there saying, yeah, a lot of people knew that you shouldn't leave your young intern alone with Eric Swalwell. A lot of people knew, and y'all didn't do nothing about it. And therein lies the problem. Because what are we really doing here? It is time for us to actually keep these folks accountable. We pay their salaries, and guess what? We give them performance reviews every 2 and 4 years. Y'all are not making the grade. We need to be putting y'all on a performance improvement plan, okay? It's time for a PIP. And that's why on this platform, we're going to tell the truth and stay undistracted. On this episode, my group chat bestie, Dr. David Johns, joins me to talk untrending news, and then I'm sitting down with content creator Arielle Fodor. Now, if you're on Instagram or TikTok, you know her as Mrs. Frazzled. We'll unpack the big story she helped break about sexual misconduct by California gubernatorial candidate and Congressman Eric Swalwell. But first, let's get into some untrending news. Friends. I am joined once again for today's untrending news by my good friend, your good friend, and our group chat brother, thought leader and executive director and president of the National Black Justice Collective, Dr. David J. Johns. Welcome back.
Happy to be back, Fred.
On today, because we're, a little bit ratchet and a little bit holy. We can do both at the same time. Okay, so let's jump right in. Hungary's former right-wing prime minister, Viktor Orban, was defeated this week after a whole bunch of years in power, like 16 years in power. Yeah. Orban became a guiding star for the rising number of far-right politicians around the world. And not surprisingly, the far-right politician in our backyard, Donald Trump, absolutely adored him. But the people had another opinion, so they rose up. And frankly, this is a really stunning defeat. And so it was brought by a groundswell of grassroots activism against him, including by a whole bunch of women activists and politicians. Yep. And Orban's party, like a whole lot of dictatorships, is, quote, a very macho party in style and in how they think about the family and the world. This is what a former member of parliament explained to The Guardian. So let's be clear. The new prime minister is not particularly progressive, right? The replacement isn't that great. But this is a step in the right direction, maybe? I don't know. What say you?
Orban wasn't just a Hungarian politician, he was the global far right's darling. He was
Yeah.
proof of concept. Right over 16 years, his party changed electoral laws to make it nearly impossible for opposition parties to compete. They gerrymandered districts, capturing state
Mm-hmm.
media. They used government contracts to reward loyalists and to punish critics. He
Now,
declared
doesn't
a
that
state of
sound familiar?
and listen, that's where I was going, Fred. You already know.
And so, like,
Including,
look.
he declared a state of an emergency so many times that it became a governing strategy. And so, this fall, organized primarily by women, is incredibly important because
Yeah.
it's a reminder for us that we always have the power. And women in particular in Hungary weren't just organizing for what we traditionally might put in a bucket of women's rights. They understood that they were fighting to defend democracy itself. And so
That's
my
right.
hope is that we all celebrate that shift happens and that we appreciate that the blueprint that authoritarian regimes are using, they've been stealing off this nigga's notebook, excuse me, cheating off his cheat sheet. Know that that's not a winning strategy. You at some point got to do your own work, homeboy.
But I mean, the playbook that you laid out is so important for people to remember because it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just one charismatic figure, one party taking over parliament. It was capturing media. It was building up state media. It was attacking academic institutions. It was filling the cultural zeitgeist with false wars and creating scapegoats out of vulnerable and marginalized people. And once again, it was those same vulnerable and marginalized people who rose up and said, "We not doing that." So let's
Period.
take our notes, America, and stop playing around. Let's keep moving. Let's bring this a little closer to home. Let's talk about what's going on in New Jersey. There
Mm.
is a growing number of states that are changing their custody laws to prevent children of undocumented parents from going into the foster system, and New Jersey is considering joining that group. So, first of all, before I tell you the rest of this news, let's just talk about the fact that there are 11,000 children, 11,000 children who are citizens and have been separated from their detained, reportedly undocumented parents. And
Look,
some unknown number of those children have gone into foster care. That alone is sinful.
period. Full stop. We cannot call ourselves pro family when we watch citizen children
Yeah,
disappear into a foster system because their parents were taken in the night, that they are victims of stochastic violence. And I want us all to remember, in this space that you built, Brittany, that this isn't a new system being activated. It's
Mm-hmm.
an existing broken one being weaponized. And so
Mm-hmm.
for folks who are still lying to themselves and saying this isn't about me, this is about some other group of people, remember, and then they came, but those 11,000 children,
Yeah,
citizen children, separated and detained, we have to ask, where are the black children in that number? Because Haitian families,
that's
African
right.
Americans, Caribbean communities are inside this story, and we are not, they are not the headline. And so I want us to celebrate this law, considering beautifully that um, a parent's responsibility doesn't end at the point at which they are victims of stochastic or state sanctioned violence.
So that's right. Now these states are pushing to give parents the right to choose another adult in the child's life to appoint as their new guardian or at least temporary guardian instead. And
Right.
I think as a woman with young children, I have played all of these potential outcomes in my head through conversations with Reggie. If either one of us were to ever be with our children and be picked up, right? If they felt like we didn't have the right documentation, if we were engaged in political protest and they wanted to shut us up, if at any point they came for us and our children were suddenly at risk, what will we do? What's the game plan? Who do we call? What's the number? Where is the emergency number written? How do we make sure that the right people get the right information and that my baby's in the right place? Like, this should be adopted by every single state, to be clear, as a band aid, not as a permanent solution, because what should ultimately be happening is that I should be getting the hell up out of here, right? Abolishing ICE is not some radical idea. You and I are both older than ICE,
Period.
right? Like,
And
there was a precedent created to create said department, and we can create a precedent to do something different. There is no reason why we have to accept this just the way that it is. But at the very least, in the meantime, 11,000 children and a number growing every day, those people, those children should be able to be put into the care of somebody who loves them, who knows them, who will watch after them, instead of being put into a system where there are already tens of thousands of children
That's
who are
right.
not being properly cared for and looked after, right? There are solutions to this. And the question is, our states, our leaders, our governors, our elected officials, are they going to have the courage? Speaking of courage, though, last week we were talking about the beef between Don and Gino, and this week we talking about the beef between Trump
Between
and everybody, but in particular, Pope Leo. Now listen, I'm not even
the
Catholic.
14th. You got to put the whole put
Yeah,
the
you're right.
respect on
Pope
it. The
Leo the
14th.
14th. Let me be precise because it was
Put the respect on his name in Birdman language.
to quote my auntie, I'm not even Catholic. Okay, at every single syllable.
Uh-huh.
And still, I'm Team Pope on this one because after Trump's comment that he would wipe out, quote, a whole civilization if Iran did not reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the Pope was even more vocal about being against this war that is escalating. And, you know, this Pope has been very vocal about a whole lot. So then this weekend, Trump went off and went all out against the Pope on Truth Social, saying that he's, and all caps, weak on crime, like the caps are supposed to scare us, and terrible for foreign policy. Roll the clip.
We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our cities.
So then,
Who's the wings? Who's
Who
the
is-
wings?
listen, even more wildly, Trump posted a photo of himself as Jesus. Yeah, pause for dramatic effect because I was literally speechless, right? So he puts himself out there as Jesus, supposedly healing the people, making the lame walk, as the word says, and the blind to see. And then the Pope actually responded to these typical tirades and this ridiculousness. You know what? Let me just show you what the Pope had to say.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe I am called to do, what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policy, as he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is a message that the world needs to hear today.
My, somebody who actually knows the words and knows that it's not called 2 Corinthians. So listen, just like we stood 10 toes down with Dawn Staley, we stand 10 toes down with Pope Leo the 14th. There's been much talked about this. This is absolutely trending news. But here's the thing I think people haven't been talking about enough. He said, I have no fear of the Trump administration.
Period.
And it is important that a white man from Chicago,
Period.
an American, and a religious figure, while people are bastardizing what Christianity is supposed to be, is the one who stands up and says, I see the devil, I know the devil, and I ain't scared of the devil. You understand what I'm saying?
How about the Pope of Rome out here being braver than the whole of Congress?
Now, come on.
I want to sit with that, right? We have a sitting Pope, a man whose institution has spent centuries carefully avoiding direct political confrontation.
That's
who
right.
is now more willing to speak plainly about war, about power, about truth than most elected officials in this country. He clearly said he has no fear. He clearly said that his job is to proclaim the gospel, and apparently that gospel has something to say about threatening to wipe out a whole civilization or otherwise commit genocide.
Or, make yourself out to be Jesus.
Period. And his clarity in saying, don't send for me unless I call for you, and buy ashy should embarrass every Democrat who told us to wait and see or to work within the system. If the Vatican found its spine,
Yep.
what exactly is the excuse, beloved?
And every Republican who swears up and down that not only are they the party of family values, but that they are the true followers of Christ. And I know the hypocrisy has never stopped a Republican from being ridiculous. However, what you're saying is absolutely true. Are you not embarrassed? Like, the Jesus that you proclaim is very clearly being quoted and, to be clear, embodied by this man dressed in all white, down like he going on a a riverboat cruise, right, on Labor Day. And he is out here embarrassing the folks who were elected to stand up. I think so many people are getting frustrated.
Yeah.
And when I say so many people, I very specifically mean lifelong Democrats, people who identify themselves not as leftists, not even as progressives, but as liberals, right? As like even some centrists who are tired of getting online and seeing Republicans who have no courage and Democrats who think they're the same as CNN. Because why are you getting on Threads reporting what the Republicans did instead of getting on television and telling me what you're going to do about it? I don't need you to be the news. I got Reuters for that. I got
Joy
maybe
and Reed.
Empire for that. I got Joy and Reed for that. I got Undistracted for that. I don't
Period.
need that.
That's right.
Leader Jeffries. And these are people that I know and that I deeply respect. And it is our job as citizens to tell the truth out loud at all times because those folks work for us. And so if my reasonable expectation is that you are going to get up there and represent my interests, not just in word, but in deed, then it should be my reasonable expectation that the Pope can spend his time blessing babies and not having to stand up against the bully that you're afraid to fight.
What is unique about this moment is someone who understands this, the actual head of the global Catholic Church and institutions whose imagery is being co-opted in this moment, looking at it and saying, not on my watch, beloved. I want us to have a little bit of that energy. I hope that rubs off. I hope that gets on people's foreheads and gets into the
come on, like Palm Sunday, okay?
That's what
like
I'm saying. I want us to cloak ourselves in that rather than continuing to cloak ourselves in this foolishness.
I'm glad to see a Pope who is standing 10 toes down and riding on what the roots of the word are and not what these folks have created it to be.
Yeah, as the kids would say, he's the birthday.
He's the birthday, and we're celebrating him. And with that is our untrending news for the week. David, thank you so much for popping in. You are brilliant. You the professor. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Fred. Love you much.
You know, here at Undistracted, we're all about staying, undistracted, finding the balance between being informed, empathetic, and open, and staying, sane. And if you love Undistracted, you're going to love the Meteor newsletter. 3 times a week, it lands in your inbox with enlightening, surprising, and occasionally hilarious perspectives on the news, culture, sports, and the fight for gender and racial justice. You'll get exclusive interviews with women and non-binary people making news, plus elders we look up to like Anita Hill and Gloria Steinem. You'll hear writers like Nona Willis-Aronowitz, Julian Escobedo-Shepherd, Rebecca Carroll, Shannon Malero, and Jessica Valenti, who all dissect the news, plus a little behind the scenes of what's happening right here at Undistracted. So if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Head to wearethemeteor.com/newsletters or write down to our show notes and sign up for the newsletter. Trust me, your inbox deserves it. That's wearethemeteor.com/newsletters or the notes on this episode. You can thank me later. Y'all, I am so thrilled to be joined today by a voice that many of you may know from your timelines, but whose impact goes far beyond the algorithm. Arielle Fodor, also known on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads as Mrs. Frazzled. Arielle is a former kindergarten teacher, and y'all know we love teachers around here, turned content creator who built a platform by breaking down complex stories about politics and power in a way that's accessible and real.
They don't want us to all pay attention and ask for things, but too bad, so sad, because I have a plan.
Exactly what we like to try to do here at Undistracted. She's usually sharing stories about the education sphere, but recently, she and a small group of women creators amplified stories from accusers of Congressman Eric Swalwell, a role that helped to lead the reporting that prompted his resignation both from the governor's race and from Congress. I wanted to talk to Arielle about what happened, how she handled it, which was chef's kiss, and how she made sure to do so in a way that was responsible and safe, not just for her, but for the survivors. So, Arielle, thank you so much for being here at Undistracted. We really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so awesome. I'm so excited.
So listen, we start off asking the same question in 3 words, which I know might feel impossible. In 3 words, how are you feeling today?
Tired. hopeful,
Okay.
and I was gonna say fired up. That's 2 words.
But we can make it a compound word. That's fine.
Sure.
We can make it a compound word.
It's hyphenate. Yeah.
Tired, hopeful, and fired up. That feels like a really distinct combination, but it also feels like it's probably familiar to a whole lot of us right now, given the fact that we definitely contain multitudes and have to hold all of these feelings at once. What's got you fired up in particular?
Just hearing how many people are excited about the idea of not having predators in power anymore. And it is a
Small
rare
thing.
It's a rare thing that men see power, especially white men, and it's really wonderful to be like, oh, here we go. Like, he is not going to get away with this just by resigning from Congress. He's not going to get away with this just by resigning from the governor's race. There's going to be more to come, and his little friends can run too. Like, it's really...
Y'all can all skedaddle, okay?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't
Yes.
care which side of the aisle you sit on. I don't care if I agree with you on policy or not. Y'all can all get to skedaddling. Go ahead.
Promptly.
Promptly, immediately, if not sooner. So part of the reason why we care so much about this is that you and I are both former teachers. And I always tell people that no matter what I do next, that will always be the hardest job I ever had. I taught 3rd grade, you taught kinder, 3rd grade, some things in between. So you've clearly been focused on this education beat. So how did you get involved in the Swalwell story?
It was just an accident because coming from the education world, I don't know diddly squat about DC or politics or whatever, really, like other than like what we know from civics class. But unfortunately, I saw behind the curtain really quickly and was starting to be told these horrible stories of like Swalwell, and I had posted with him and thinking he was a normal man, and he was not. I was warned that he was not a safe person, that he had done bad things to people that I know and people that I care about, and I just thought that was crazy. So it was really just an accident, but I just couldn't even fathom why people thought the response to that being, it's just how DC is, that's how the Hill is. I was like, that's not an acceptable response to me.
When you talk about people saying this is just normal, I remember being a college student and interning in my former congressman's office, and my first day as an intern, 20-year-old intern, I am downstairs with the legislative director, and he's showing me around. Really wonderful gentleman. He's showing me around. He's telling me, where the cafeteria is and whatnot. And this old, and I mean like old, like crusty, dusty, musty, rusty, old congressman, a white man, walks up and he starts talking to the legislative director, and he goes, "You just always have the prettiest young girls with you." And I was like, I just came down here for some lunch and to, learn how to be a congressional intern. I'm here for orientation. What is going on? And he looked at me like, if you ever need anything, give me a call. Your point is so well made, and I don't think people really understand how extremely normal it is for people to try to use their power in this very protected space of the U.S. Congress and prey on young people, young women, young men who are innocently just bopping along, trying to learn, trying to grow, and don't know any better. And you kind of bumped into that reality. It had to absolutely sicken you.
Absolutely sicken. And it's so apt that you mentioned that happened to you at orientation, because it is literally a part of the whispered orientation for interns at the state level and at the federal level, that, hey, you want to watch out for that guy, or it's too pervasive. It's sickening.
And you worked on this with Cheyenne Hunt, who's also a content creator. And you also worked with a third woman. How did they get involved? What was their role? Describe to us how this all came together. Take us to the Woodward and Bernstein of it all, if you will.
Yes. I mean, it is really crazy. And Annika has now come public. She was on CBS.
Yes.
So Cheyenne, oh my word. I mean, so I didn't know Cheyenne at all, actually. I had posted, as you saw, and I was kind of like acting a little crazy for a few weeks. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm banging my head against the wall here.
Yeah.
Hitting a dead end, I think, that CNN had hit before in 2016 and then again in 2019. So I got a text message saying, do you know a Cheyenne? I heard that she might be posting tomorrow. I literally ran around my house like I won the Super Bowl. I was like, we're going to get him. We're going to get him. Somebody else is coming. Like Paul Revere. And
Paulina Revere.
we ended up all in a group chat and just, it was so funny every day to see the new conspiracy theory or what the new people in DC were saying, like who this was that was behind this.
Because people were like, you're MAGA, you're being financed by Roger Stone. Meanwhile, you were like, girl, who is Roger Stone?
And then they were like, you're actually lying because you don't know who Roger Stone is. And I'm like, name the state superintendent of Oklahoma. Like, you don't know that. So
So what are we really talking about here?
Yeah.
I mean, we're being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, but there is this kind of ongoing conversation, necessarily so, about the space of media as it evolves and the difference between creators, podcasters like myself, people who are kind of voices and commentators and analysts, and journalists, right, who go to school and get trained about ethics and confirmations. As an independent creator, kind of operating outside of a newsroom, how do you think about the threshold for verifying source credibility before you start amplifying stories?
That's such a wonderful question. Obviously, it's so different, and I have the utmost respect for journalists and publications and all that they do. Maybe even more so now because it's very a lot. But for me, like, I just need to really know what I know. And it's the same kind of way that you and I would vet something in real life. Like, a friend comes to you and you see the receipts, you see the text messages, you see, like, what you need to see from them. And that's really, like, it. Like, I saw that kind of thing from enough people independently of one another that I was like, this is absolutely true. And I got confirmation from a sitting congressperson and their chief of staff that this was happening, that this was a problem. And that was really enough for me to be like, it started eating me up. And I was like, I can't sit on this. And I can't believe that there are men now getting on the news who have held power in the hallowed halls of Congress who are sitting there like, I actually knew the whole time. Yeah,
The
this
whole
man.
time.
And I'm like, you let me look insane on the internet. You were like nothing. So that frustrates me.
They knew the whole time, and to be clear, they are bipartisan in nature, right? They're on both sides of the island. They were like, yeah, we do.
Yes.
You're like, you don't send anybody to Matt Gaetz, and you don't send anybody to Eric Swalwell. And this was just accepted knowledge, despite the fact that people were clearly being harmed. How do you think about protecting the women who were sharing their stories? Because it's one thing to independently verify what you did. It's another thing to say, how do I ensure that these survivors, that these courageous, brave women are safe in the midst of all of this?
And this is something that's so important to me to talk about too, because I think there is a world in every industry has it where people want to be first and they want to be whatever. It's kind of reckless.
Yeah, it's
And
extremely reckless. Yeah.
it really is another facet of the world that bothers me, but that's another fight for another time. But I really wanted to make sure that if we were even going to start talking about this, that we had somebody for the women. And I couldn't, I refused to even vague post about it until I made sure that there was a lawyer who was very reputable and very talented that had taken on things like this before, that had raised their hand and said, I will represent the women pro bono. Like, this is something that I care about and, whatever. So once I had that piece, I knew that then I could, if more women came to me, I could be able to send them to a lawyer to understand not only their rights, but also what Eric Swalwell cannot do to them, because they were so full of fear that they were the only ones, or their life was going to be ruined because of things that had been said to them and what they had witnessed in orientation of their jobs on the Hill.
Yeah.
So that was like the cornerstone for me. And once I locked that in, I sent a group text to a couple of group chats and said, I am posting about this if it doesn't break the news by Friday. If I have shaken the tree and nobody is biting, and if it's not up, I'm going to do it. I took out an umbrella policy on my house, and just then we were alive after that. But this protection of the survivors was like so important, because this is not for clicks. This is people's lives. And I think people forget about that a lot. Like the humanness behind the news stories that they're trying to distribute, you know?
I also thought what was so powerful is that one of the protection mechanisms you all put in place was helping these women find alternate employment. You know, people have risen their eyebrows at how many of the women who've come out remain engaged with former Congressman Swalwell in some form or fashion, ask for a recommendation letter. And as somebody who used to work on the Hill, I'm like, if your entire resume is filled up with this guy's name, who else are you going to? Who else is going to write you the recommendation letter? If your name is trash on the Hill, it's trash on the Hill. You cannot go from office to office, from job to job. You have no career ladder if you come out against this guy and you don't remain friendly with this guy that hurt you, because he can ruin your entire career. And I thought it was so powerful that you said, not just a lawyer, but how about we make sure that these women can find gainful employment after this?
Yes, I am so glad you added that perspective, because that is also like, those of us who aren't in the DC bubble don't understand so many of the little nuances of this story. So right away we were talking about like people aren't leaving because they're scared of losing employment. They're scared of somebody in that office, quote unquote, burying them.
Right.
Like things like that. So it was really just a no-brainer. And like, you'd be shocked at the number of Congress people that this man pissed off. I mean, the women, oh, sorry, I don't know if we cuss on this. Sorry.
You're fine. Trust me.
He, you know, there were a lot of congresswomen in particular raising the alarm on this for a very long time, both internally and externally. And they were just like, yeah, we're going to help. We're going to help. So they were like instrumental in that. I can take very little credit, but as soon as we got that green light, I was like, blast it. Tell everyone, because it's so important.
Tell everyone. Because people had been trying to say it, right? And it wasn't being listened to. But to say that once you blasted it and your posts were up, to say that those posts had ramifications is an understatement, right? So let's just walk through it. A few weeks after you and Cheyenne started posting about Swalwell's accusers in March, the San Francisco Chronicle and CNN both published separate investigations of their own on Friday, April 10th. 24 hours after those stories came out, Swalwell lost all 21 of his endorsements. And I don't think people get how major a thing that is. We're talking unions walking away, former politicians walking away, kingmakers in California walking away. And those endorsements were from fellow Democrats. And then by the end of the weekend, this past Sunday, Swalwell had canceled his candidacy and announced that he would resign for Congress. And I want to be really clear. He admitted to, quote, personal failings, and these are super air quotes here, but claims he never had unconsensual sex and says he wants to fight the accusations in private. So here's my question to you. After all of that, what was it like seeing such a dramatic shift in the response once the story became more than whispers, more than people speaking and not being heard, even more than social media posts that went viral, but once the response was published by a traditional outlet?
Yes, I mean, and to get there, I think what really shapes the reaction that we saw publicly is what was going on privately the week that this was finally like something that was being talked about in DC, because it really rattled them that I was not MAGA. I was not some opposition from another party. They ran Oppo research on me and another victim and Cheyenne for a week and found nothing. So they settled on, it's Katie Porter. They like called everybody and they were like, they were being paid by Katie Porter, which is so hilarious to me. Behind the scenes, now that he was privy to what was going on. We started to watch. What is he going to say? What's going to come out? We knew that they had a meeting. They had a press briefing about us. They had done all this stuff. We then watched this man lie to the press in a way that I was stunned. I was like, oh, he may have just made people so mad. And alas, he did. If you read a lot of the stories, a lot of the women say, I wasn't going to come forward. The woman in San Francisco Chronicle detailing how she was sexually assaulted twice. She had called the office and almost told what had happened to her, and the staffer goes, actually, I don't want to know. And she was like, it's time. The brazenness of this man's hubris was on display last week. He really believed he was untouchable. And then CNN finally went to him for comment. Instead of providing comment, he used context clues to figure out who the anonymous women were alleging he assaulted them, and sent them cease and desist to their phone
Which was a while.
Literally 12:05 a.m., like midnight. And it was just like, also wasn't expecting that, because I was expecting
but his dogs can't help but to holler. Okay,
you're right. You are so right. And every press release he puts out is the whiniest shit I've ever read in my life. I'm like, you just can't help yourself.
That Instagram video that he first put out, I was like, you really think we believe you?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I don't think any of us are going to reasonably say we don't believe in due process, right? But what due process is for criminal procedures, for civil procedures. But what is clear to me is that everybody can't be lying. All of the congresswomen you pissed off, all of the women who have now come out, once they realized they were not the only one, we continue to see more and more coming. And 3 women in a group chat who said, we've got independent sources, text messages, receipts, medical information, verified from a sitting congressperson and a chief of staff. Baby, you cannot sit here and look in this camera and just because you think you're sincere that we're supposed to think the same thing. You're right. The hubris was absolutely on 11. And I think it's really easy to look at this case and be disheartened. Yes, he resigned, but this behavior was an open secret for how many years, right? And nothing had been done. And, we've also got a commander-in-chief with 27 credible sexual assault accusations against him. And I don't digress there, right? Because some people think that we can't be mad at both of them and try to hold both of them accountable. Why do we accept this kind of violence from our public figures, right? Are we actually in the process of stopping not just this congressperson, but this culture?
Yes. And that is something that is like my next biggest thing. I mean, there's a lot of people asking me, are you going to take down so-and-so? Are you going to take down so-and-so? No, like, I am retired, but now I have shown everyone how to do it if they would be so inclined to do it themselves. But that culture is what has to go. It has to, because it is something that is so unsafe for the people who literally prop up our law system. And I also agree. I don't digress. It's all interconnected. Epstein, Trump, the sex pest culture of the right that we have seen, but we cannot act like this is not also happening on the left. Being a Democrat doesn't automatically magically absolve someone of this behavior, because they really, I mean, he ran for governor knowing he was investigated at least twice before, and knowing what he had done months ago or was still attempting to do. Like, that is a big indication of the culture that propped this man up and allowed this to fester. So that's next. I am like chatting with different groups, different orgs on the Hill, different groups of Congress people, caucuses, all of the things, because I just think it's not enough to stop at consequences for one man when this is the world, for lack of a better word.
This is the world that far too many of us are living in. Before I let you go, I think there's an important lesson for content creators, and there's an important lesson about content creators. What would you say to your fellow content creators about how to thoughtfully and responsibly approach such serious things?
Fallout that could happen for people that you're trying to protect, like just trying to mitigate that, really like mapping it out. Because yes, I'm sure being first and the fastest, it's very enticing in this breaking news ecosystem, but being a commentator and being somebody who can like sit down and think about change instead of just getting the news out, I mean, that there's a difference there. And I would just encourage everybody to like feel free to like vet it the way that you see fit and make sure that you have your receipts. Take out your umbrella policy on your house so that they don't sue you into oblivion, because we don't have the infrastructure that a publication has. While we don't have the investigative piece, which is so invaluable, we also don't have the legal team to protect us. So make sure that you're rock solid before you start talking.
Important.
So important. I think people get excited and get carried away, but we can't, especially with things this serious and this important.
So that's the lesson for content creators. But I also think that there's a lesson about content creators. There are people that dismiss content creators or content creation, I think, at their peril. What would you say about the power that you and your peers hold, especially in moments like these?
I had the immense pleasure of working with journalists and investigators throughout the past few weeks who have a common goal to me, but function completely differently. And one thing that Annika and Cheyenne and I always talk about is just like the wonder and marvel that like none of it could have happened without the other piece. And that's something that I think we could take away from this, is that there is, it's not as much of earned media versus new media against one another as people will portray it. It really can be very symbiotic. And Mel Mason at Politico wrote a beautiful article going through every single piece of this. And it just really is like, that is possible.
That's
if we
right.
just play on each other's strengths and work together. And we're still doing it. And I think that that's something that could be a lesson for all of us.
That is something that could be a lesson for all of us. We say all the time here that there is always a role for everyone to play. That symbiosis has meant something incredible for not just former Congressman Swalwell survivors, but hopefully for the culture that we will see come tumbling down very soon. So we are grateful to you for your work. We're grateful to you for finding that symbiosis between you and traditional journalists. But one thing we're not going to do is give billionaires credit for your work, okay? So
oh my God.
Know.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. And yet people love billionaires because they think they're going to become one day. And it's like, girl, he's not going to write you back. Just let it go. He's not that into you.
Exactly. Exactly. That's correct.
He's not that into you, but we are very into you, Mrs. Frazzled. You're not frazzled at all. You're quite focused, and we appreciate all of your important work on this and for spending time with us here at Undistracted. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Y'all, I remember being a young staffer and a young intern on the Hill, so excited to put my fingerprint on the world and learn the ways and the rules of the halls of power, not realizing just how many of those rules were about sex and intimidation and extracting from young people the feelings of power and importance that some people were looking for by any means necessary. I was a young girl then, but I'm 41 now. And I've been in a whole lot of rooms and a whole lot of industries and a whole lot of spaces where those rules, spoken and unspoken, are exactly the same. It's happening in media, it's happening in politics, it's happening in religious institutions, it's happening in the music industry, the film industry, it's happening in every single workplace. And it's high time that we understand that whether we like the person or not doesn't dictate how accountable they should be. There's no possible way for a culture of exploitation and extraction to end if we only hold the people accountable that we don't agree with, whose music we don't really care for, who we didn't vote for, and we let the rest of those people off with a pass. So yeah, the left's got a problem with this just like the right does, just like the centrists do. And it's on us to be better people, to be wiser folks, and to hold the bar steady for every single person. Do you know how many young folks, men and women and non-binary people, have gone into the halls of Congress bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, wide-eyed with big dreams and big ideals, ready to change the world, and had that light snuffed out by somebody who thought they were entitled to their body and their time? Yeah, we cannot afford to lose that genius. We cannot afford to be that dismissive of their dignity and humanity just because they're young and they didn't know the rules. We cannot afford for folks on any side of the aisle, in any industry or in any role, to continue to exploit the very people who keep us going. It's on us to make sure that the standard is clear and that we hold it for every damn body. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being. Thanks for doing. I'm Brittany Packnett Cunningham. Let's go get free.